It doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. It doesn't matter if it's a holiday, a weekend, a middle of the week. It's always a party in Vegas.
Some days you just can't predict what's going to happen.
A male fell from the MGM Sign 15 stories.
I just knew his internal injuries would be great.
He came at me and just laid into my finger. In 24 hours, it was the size of a baseball glove. I'm saying goodbye to my fingers.
We need to be talking about taking something off.
We were losing altitude. This is it. This is how I'm gonna die.
When someone arrives, the only chance they have is the chance they have with us.
Paramedical.
Jesus.
911, what is your emergency?
Las Vegas, a glittery world unlike any other place on the planet. Everything is possible, and nothing seems real. Especially when you're from small-town USA like Tara and Richard Montgomery. The couple from Paducah, Kentucky, won a trip to Sin City at a trade show in Atlanta.
We spun the wheel and then we realized we won the grand prize, which was a trip to Las Vegas. We had never been to Vegas before, so we were excited to just see what it was about. You see it on television, but it was kind of neat to see it in person.
I was just amazed this place never goes to sleep. It's all hours of the night, 24/7. I think I was really just totally mesmerized by the, especially at night, all the lights. Before we even came out, Tara kept saying, I want to go see the MGM. And I said, okay, we'll work it into our schedule. We've got several days we're going to be there. And time was beginning to run out on our trip, so she said, let's go tomorrow morning. And I said, okay, that sounds great.
We were walking down the strip, you know, shopping for souvenirs for some of our family, and we realized that there was construction going on around the MGM, so we weren't expecting that, so we had to kind of stop and regroup there.
Then, out of nowhere, the unthinkable happens.
We looked up and out of the sign, we see this man falling.
He was kind of waving his arms and he was screaming for help. Then he hit the ground and it just got dead silent. I did a quick glance around to see maybe we were seeing a movie being filmed or something, that maybe this wasn't real. This wasn't a movie.
I grabbed Tara's arm and I said, we've got to go. She said, go where? I said, we have got to go help this man. No one is helping this man.
As a nurse, I was honestly not prepared to really find someone that was alive. I was just screaming, someone call 911.
Paramedical.
I'm standing in front of the GM Grand Casino, and a man just fell from scaffolding 100 feet at least.
The Tropicana side or the Boulevard side?
On the Boulevard side.
We got a call for a Delta response. I'm seeing that, you know, it's an unknown age male who fell from the MGM Sign, which is almost 15 stories. There's no possible way he could have survived.
The sign sits on Las Vegas Boulevard. People and cars jam this street 24/7. The paramedics will have to battle traffic to get there. Until they do, it's up to Richard and Tara.
Finally found a man laying there on his back in a perfect little small area.
Completely covered in dirt. Small pebbles all over his face, in his eyes, making some noises, kind of a rattling as he's breathing.
Incredibly, the man is still alive.
Fire or medical?
We need an ambulance out in front of MGM.
Is this for the person that fell?
Yes.
Okay.
He's passed out right now. He's passed out right now.
Is he breathing?
Is he breathing?
His airway's getting tight.
His airway's getting tight. We got a nurse here that was walking along.
Flag him down when you see us. We're coming at you.
His head was only about 6 or 8 inches away from the window washing scaffolding. Just another foot or two away was a concrete retaining wall.
And he missed that just by, I mean, inches. If he had hit that, we would have come upon a much more gruesome sight than what we found.
I began trying to assess the other situation that we had around there. We were beginning to get drops of water falling around us. And so I looked up at that time, and when I did, I could see up into the base of this sign that was up, I'd say 150 feet or so. I'm concerned about this sign. They've got this crane hooked onto it, and I'm afraid if this thing starts to give, or there's other things, metal going to come out of the sign, we've got to get out of here.
Tara's training as a nurse takes over.
I knew the first thing we had to do was establish his airway, make sure he was breathing good. I pulled down on his chin so that he was getting as much air as he possibly could. I also was very fearful that he had spinal cord injuries.
Without emergency treatment, he'll die on the spot.
We just knew that any second that was going to be the last breath that we would hear.
I just knew that he wasn't going to survive.
Experts say the human body can't survive much more than a 30-foot fall. This man has fallen 150 feet. That's 15 stories.
Just pray, Richard, pray for this man. I said, he's got a family. I said, he might have a wife or children. He's got a mom, dad, brothers and sisters. I said, I think the reality of this is a person now was kind of sinking in on me. So I said, just pray for him. And so a couple seconds went by and I said, like, pray out loud. I need to hear your words.
I reached my hand over and I laid my hand on this guy's chest. Just began praying. And I just remember praying in hardest I think I've ever prayed in my entire life. I just remember asking God, please just let this man live. Please let him have just one more breath.
The paramedics fight through the traffic and reach the scene.
I'm looking up at the MGM sign and seeing how far the distance was. We were walking up on a dead body.
Paramedics were there, I would say 4 to 5 minutes. If we were in Kentucky, it would have been, 10 to 15 minutes.
As they began to come in, we got out of the way. There was not enough room in the area we were working with.
I just bawled for a little bit because it was so overwhelming. I told my husband, I said, we just saw a man die.
It's now up to the paramedics.
We had to go over the sides of this crane to get to this gentleman because it was so confined and so blocked off. And then we got to his side. It was a huge shock. He was breathing. We went from calling this guy a dead body to he's still alive, like we got to get moving. We figured we would just maintain his airway, his breathing and circulation to make sure that everything was in line with what the trauma center needed to resuscitate him when we got there.
University Medical Center is just 15 minutes from the scene.
The ambulance radio came in and said that they had a patient who had fallen off the MGM sign. We were in a state of disbelief. All of us know what that looks like. We drive by it frequently, and we prepped for the worst.
UMC is the only level 1 trauma center in Nevada.
So when someone arrives, the only chance they have is the chance they have with us.
On the way, paramedics identify the man, Charles Schuler.
I was busy on my computer. My wife came into my office and she said, that was the Young Electric Sign Company calling. Chuck's work. The human resources director said, there's been a problem at work. Chuck had a fall. And I knew right then he was dead. I asked what they knew. They said they didn't know anything. And I said, well, where did they take him? And they said, UMC.
Turn around, heads over here.
31 minutes after the first 911 call, Chuck is wheeled into one of UMC's trauma bays.
1, 2, 3.
Whenever we bring in a level 1 trauma, you feel like, okay, now I got the help that I need. There's 10 people taking care of this patient to make sure that the patient survives.
Just hang in there, okay?
Dr. John Fildes takes charge.
I've seen what it looks like when somebody falls 150 feet, and they will come in with open skull fractures and visible brain matter. In his case, it was clear that he was badly injured, but I was really relieved that he had escaped some of those things.
Not only is Chuck alive, he's awake and conscious.
Chuck, do you know where you are? I'm in church. You're in church?
Chuck has numerous external injuries, but it might be the internal ones that kill him. They need to find those fast. Chuck's parents arrive, desperate for any kind of news.
The lady guard ushered us into some kind of a private room, and she said the social worker will be with you shortly. I thought it was confirmed. I had lost him already.
All she can tell them is that Chuck is alive and the trauma team is assessing his injuries. And the first thing they do is to treat his pain.
These kinds of injuries come with extreme amounts of pain, 8 out of 10, 24 hours a day, nonstop. Most people have never experienced anything like that.
He's given an intravenous synthetic morphine and then a Valium-type drug to deal with the anxiety.
We went ahead and CAT scanned his brain, his entire spine, his chest and his abdomen and pelvis, and we shot x-rays of any area that looked like it could be fractured.
The scans show a small hemorrhage on the brain, broken ribs, broken shoulder blade, collapsed left lung, shattered femur, and fractured spine. It's a terrifying list.
The social worker gave us a rundown of his injuries. I mean, there was a lot of injuries, you know, and is he going to be all right? And there was only hope left. And there was precious little of that.
Chuck Schuler fell 150 feet off the MGM sign. It's headline news all over Vegas.
A cell phone video shot by a witness shows Schuler being taken away on a stretcher after falling more than 100 feet from the MGM sign to the ground below. The repairman suffered a broken back, femur, fractured ribs, and head trauma.
For Tara and Richard Montgomery, the couple from Paducah, Kentucky, who earlier today kept him alive until help arrived, it's a miracle.
We just looked at each other, just astonished, thinking, how in the world could someone survive a fall like that?
They said he was at the University Medical Center trauma unit, and that he was in critical but stable condition. We kind of got excited, to be honest with you. That was just like exhilarating feeling that, okay, he's stable.
Because UMC is a level 1 trauma center, specialists like neurosurgeon Dr. Stuart Kaplan are on call.
Obviously, the general rules of physics didn't apply because basically if you fall 150 feet straight down, one would assume that you would die. I mean, it was shocking to us all.
Chuck has survived the fall, but he's not out of the woods yet.
The guy is moving, so we know neurologically he's okay. He had what they call a burst fracture of L1, the first lumbar vertebra, which is the first one down from the thoracic area. But his fracture was unstable. We knew it required surgical stabilization in order to lock it in place.
If they can't stabilize Chuck's broken spine, he could wind up paralyzed. The next morning, Chuck Schuler heads into the first of 2 surgeries. One to repair his shattered femur, the second to stabilize his back. His other injuries, the broken ribs, broken shoulder blade, and the collapsed lung, are treated and will heal over time. To repair the broken femur, they insert a titanium rod in his right leg. Then, they begin the second, more delicate operation on his spine.
We have to be careful when we position them because somebody who has an unstable spine, we got to be very careful that we don't damage his spinal cord in positioning him.
They'll use a titanium rod and screws to stabilize the spine. It's vital those screws are placed in the proper trajectory or angle. For that, they use a portable X-ray machine, a fluoroscope.
So we can follow our screws as we place them into the vertebral bodies. What we then do is we basically make an incision on the back. We expose the entire spine. We then place in what they call our pedicle screws to lock in the spine. We place in our rod, place in our connecting nuts, and then we place in our bone graft material.
This should lock Chuck's spine into place, but it's a delicate operation. Things can go wrong.
The greatest fear you have when you do an operation next to the spinal cord is that you damage the spinal cord in one way.
It's a critical period. They won't know if the surgery had damaged his spinal cord until Chuck wakes up. He's beaten the odds once. Can he do it a second time?
Right after surgery, we want to see them awake and we want to see them moving their legs. Once I knew he moved his legs okay, I knew neurologically he would be okay.
2 days and 2 surgeries after his fall, Chuck comes through.
Family came, a bunch of coworkers came. I don't remember seeing any of them, but they said that they talked to me, and I was worried about work when I shouldn't be, so.
He had some brain trauma. That was what we were really worried about the whole time. Everybody's saying it's okay, he will pass through it.
The same day as Chuck's surgery, Tara and Richard, the couple from Kentucky, are heading home. But not without visiting the man who fell from the sky.
Well, somehow, I don't know how they did it, but they found out where he was at. And they took a taxi cab from the Strip over to UMC. We met them in the waiting room of the intensive care unit.
We told Rose about how we prayed for him, and she said that just explains everything. She said when he got here to the trauma unit, he was conscious, and they asked him, "Do you know where you're at?" And he said, "I'm in church." I thought that was just the neatest thing.
Boy, that just sent chills up and down my spine. Just the small things like that we can do in life for someone, not knowing what you're being asked to do at the time, how it can make an impact on someone's life.
I told my wife, that completes the miracle.
The bleeding between the brain and the skull turns out to be spinal cord fluid. That clears up on its own. Although Chuck's prognosis is good, he faces a long, long road to recovery.
I felt like it was taking my first steps all over again if I was a little kid. I was just worried that I would never get a normal stride back. I was always gonna have like some kind of limp or just an awkward, walk.
Chuck remembers little of that day he dropped from the MGM Sign.
They would tell me several times what happened, and I would just forget and then ask again what happened to me. My short-term memory was gone, I guess, for a while.
On the day of his fall, Chuck and the rest of the Sign crew were removing the LCD screens from the MGM marquee.
Everything was supposed to go smoothly. It didn't. We were getting real close to the end. The crane was hooked up to it. They cut the last few attachment points, and it wasn't budging. One of the guys thinks he knows where it's still connected. I'm running, to one side to the other. After that, I don't know what happened. Something must have broke out from underneath me, and I fell out of the sign. From what I was told, the thing that saved me was the fact that I hit a 20-foot palm tree. Probably broke my speed. I bounced off that, and I hit an 8-foot palm tree, and then I hit the ground. I hit the right things first before I hit the ground, and said everything happened just right, like a perfect fall, I guess.
8 months after his miraculous fall, Chuck Schuler goes back to work.
He had a near-death experience, and that changes people. And it may be a long time before he gets back to where he was. I'm glad that I could do my part to heal his body and give him that chance.
We're just glad we were there to help him. God gave us that opportunity through our trip, and we felt like we were just where we were supposed to be that day.
Yeah, I still see the bright lights and all the scenic things you can go see, but Vegas now means Chuck Schuler to me.
Say Las Vegas, and you think of the Rat Pack days and those legendary shows and entertainers. But there are still rats in Vegas, and they can get out of hand.
I never saw a rat in my life until I met her.
When I first came to Las Vegas, I had the notion that everybody worked at a casino. If you didn't work as a stripper or a card dealer, then you were selling beer.
People come to Vegas for all sorts of reasons. Behind the scenes can be as crazy as what you see on the Strip. And if anybody should know, it's Kathy Boudreau.
I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm also a musician. And when I'm not doing all that, I am also a rat trainer for TV shows and movies and specialty magician shows on the Strip.
Yeah.
Much like men, rats are very easy to train. You feed them, and they do pretty much what you want. And they're very affectionate, and they're very cute.
Your drinky?
I've trained them to skateboard, to swim, to play basketball, to run mazes. I love making people scream with the rats. So when they're screaming, I know I've done a good job.
Kathy has nearly 100 rats housed in her garage, or as she calls it, the rat room.
There's about 4 women that I know of that train rats. And honestly, women over 30 tend to gravitate to the little rodents. There's a big culture of women that are in love with rats.
Her latest addition is Zeke.
Hey, new dude.
He's rehearsing for Penn and Teller's show.
This little guy didn't give me any indication that he was scared of me at all. Up to that point, very friendly. I reached into the cage for him, as I do every week with a friend of mine. He came at me and just laid into my finger and just held and held and held and held.
Are you okay? Oh my God, did he bite you?
Much like Roy and his tiger, I should have paid more attention. Friend helped me rinse it off. We kind of squeezed it out a little bit, and I thought, no, it'll go away. Been training for 25 years, so you're gonna get bit. And I still had cages to clean, so I had the rest of the day to deal with.
It's ridiculous.
My fingers started getting a little larger, which is something I wasn't used to.
She called me at work. She said, a rat got me. A rat grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go, and I finally got him off. I mean, she'd been nipped before many times, you know, by other rats. She said, it's swelling up a lot, and maybe I should go over to the emergency room. And I said, well, yeah, you should.
Let's go.
Well, I was feeling very hot and feeling very dizzy and just telling Val, I just want to go back to bed. I just want to go to bed. I just want to go to bed. And, no, we have to get you taken care of.
All the while, her hand is getting bigger and bigger.
All I could feel was thud, 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 thud.
And bigger.
What is it? Bitten by a rat. Take a seat. This was like I had gotten run over by a Mack truck pain. This was not a regular rat bite. I wasn't used to this. I really wasn't used to this.
The first thing doctors ask is, where did the rat come from?
It's really important. Is this a rat that you know or a rat that you don't know? If it's a rat that you don't know, you're looking about rabies, tetanus, you're not sure where this rat has been.
Kathy has no idea where Zeke has been.
It was a roof rat, not a standard pet rat.
Besides training them, Kathy rescues rats from all over Vegas.
I got called by a woman saying that she had a rat in her backyard. So I knew that he wasn't going to be as tame as some of the other rats that I've had before.
Rabies is rare in Nevada. So what else could it be?
Hand bites are very difficult. We want to look at those very closely. If the bite is near a joint or may have hit a bone, you'll do an x-ray of that area. Animal bites can be pretty forceful, and you can actually crack a bone. You're going to look for animal teeth left behind. Swelling tells you some sense of the severity, but it also raises our suspicion for a potential infection.
The x-rays show the rat bite didn't hit a bone or burst a major blood vessel. No remnants of Zeke's teeth are there either. But Kathy's hand keeps getting bigger.
In about 3 hours is when it got to be about the size of a baseball. Just started to puff out like that.
Doctors decide to keep her overnight and start her on antibiotics.
The show was wrapping up. I got done, and I got a call from her saying she was over at the hospital. Her hand was ridiculous. It looked like Mickey Mouse's hand. And when I saw that hand, I was scared.
The pain was beyond what I could have possibly ever have thought it would be.
Days pass. There's no change in Kathy's hand. Antibiotics are not working, and her temperature is through the roof at 104 degrees. They decide to call in an infectious disease specialist.
Infectious disease is really an adventurous specialty where it relies on a lot of thinking and detective work, kind of like the Sherlock Holmes of medicine.
I don't know this doctor. Who is this doctor? Well, I'm a special doctor. Okay, well, nice to meet you, special doctor. What can we do about this?
Any animal's mouth is a very contaminated environment, and they have a high risk of infection. Specifically with rats, you worry about something called rat bite fever.
I had never heard of rat bite fever, and I'd been working with rats since the 90s.
The big issue with rat bite fever is that this bacteria then spreads systematically through the body, affecting multiple different organ systems. Kidney failure, you can end up with liver failure, and that's what causes people with rat bite fever to die.
If untreated, the fatality rate is 10 to 15%.
And he said only 12 people that I know of have ever had it in the United States. It's a third world disease.
But rat bite fever isn't the only thing that could cause Kathy's infection. He needs to take blood samples and cultures to pinpoint exactly what's causing her hand to swell. All the while, that hand keeps getting bigger.
It was the size of a baseball glove. The Red Sox could have used my hand to win a World Series. They should have.
It's a tense time for Vegas rat trainer Kathy Boudreau, waiting to find out if she's been suffering with a potentially deadly infection known as rat bite fever.
And I sit there for another 2 or 3 days in a hospital as my hand is still swelling up. One bite and my whole life could change.
When the lab results come back, there's good news. Kathy does not have rat bite fever. The bad news? It's something that's equally dangerous. An infection called cellulitis.
There are types of cellulitis that can spread up a hand, eventually get into the bloodstream and cause a bloodstream infection or sepsis, and then that can kill you.
The cellulitis was rapidly progressing and actually involved some of the tendon sheaths there because of the inability and the pain she was having with moving her finger. So it was moving much deeper than just the skin.
The longer it goes, the worse the prognosis.
A hand is a tight space, so as things swell, you can pinch off nerves and arteries where there's just no blood supply anymore. You're getting something called necrosis, which is dead tissue, or people call it gangrene. When you start to get that, boy, we need to be talking about taking something off.
The decision to amputate is now up to a hand surgeon.
How do I take care of my animals? What's going to happen is me as a comedian, as an artist, as a musician, all these things that I do in the world are all related to my hands. We just got married 2 weeks before. I still had the new wife smell, and I was about to lose my hand that he had held at the wedding. I'm looking at my fingers, and I'm realizing I'm saying goodbye to my fingers one at a time. A silly rat is going to take everything away.
Good afternoon, how are you?
The same. Finally, the very attractive hand doctor comes in and said to me, "We're going to try to save your hand." I stopped breathing. I was already ready to say goodbye to my fingers and my hand.
First, they anesthetize the hand. Then, the surgeon makes a 1/4 inch incision to see how far down the tissue is damaged. He squeezes her hand to help it drain.
It wasn't like this god-awful, icky, slimy, cottage cheesy stuff that I expected. It was just water.
They clean the incision by powering saline, or sterile salt water, into the wound. They clean out what they can, remove the tissue that was destroyed by the infection, and then close it up.
And it went from looking like a baseball mitt down to a squishy glove in about 2 days after that.
Kathy is released from the hospital, her hand intact.
If I could meet that doctor again. I'm not disabled, I'm re-abled. He saved my hand. Didn't have to cut my fingers off, didn't have to cut my hand off. I got to keep my palm. You know, I can have a palm reader read my hands now and tell me how crazy my life is.
And whatever happened to Zeke?
That rat that bit me lived a happy long life until he was 4 years old. This is Zeke Jr. And I use him to teach little kids to not be afraid of rats. He's a pretty cool little dude.
Looking for a quick getaway? That's Vegas. On any one weekend, the city's population swells by 300,000, most arriving by air, all folks looking for some sun and fun.
I had asked Susan and Doug how adventurous they would want to be on the trip, and they said, you book it, we'll do it.
Tamika Savoy and her husband Randall of Louisiana have been friends with Susan and Doug Touche for years. She plans an off-the-strip kind of getaway.
We went to Red Rock Canyon, rode our ATVs, tore a gold mine, kayaking 11 miles downriver from the Hoover Dam. I wanted, it to be memorable.
2 days later, it's back to reality. For Tamika and Susan, it's the local hospital. For Tamika's husband Randall, it's farming crawfish in the ponds of Catahoula Parish. And for Susan's husband Doug, the pilot, back to his accounting firm.
We got on the runway and took off. My husband and I we had our shoes off and we would kick back reading magazines. We weren't in the air for very long, and Randall heard Doug say that we were losing altitude. We grabbed each other's hand. This is it. This is how I'm gonna die. We felt the very first impact. Metal scraping against the cement. Bright blue flames. No one else is screaming. If they're burning like I am, they have to all be dead to not be screaming. Got my seatbelt undone, but I was out. And then when I turned back to look, Randall was crawling out the plane. Hearing a lot of fuel just pouring. And I saw Doug and Susan, and I was going to help. Fuel ignited. We collapsed in a yard, and that's when the people in the neighborhood just started coming out.
Fire medical?
I have no idea what's on fire near my house, but we need emergency rescue.
In the chaos, no one realizes at first exactly what's happened.
You got the calls an outside fire. It could be brush, could be trash. An outside fire is typically a one-engine response.
Where the plane landed, it was right in the middle of the street on an intersection. There was people everywhere.
Neighbors were grabbing hoses and anything to put out the fire, trying to just get everybody out of the plane.
I could already see the column of smoke. It was southwest of the station, a handful of miles away. Then some more reports started coming in, the plane down. We don't know what size plane it is. We don't know how many souls are on board. We upgraded to a full response.
They called for the rescue. We were not very far behind. When you go from 0 to 100 in like a second, your initial adrenaline is pretty intense.
The sirens, I heard them, they were coming.
We rounded the corner, and it was basically a street of destruction.
It's early morning in Las Vegas. And a 6-seater plane has crashed on a residential street. Debris is scattered along the full city block.
He didn't hit any houses. There were so many houses that he could have hit. That could have changed the whole scene pretty dramatically. Very surreal. Still smoldering, people everywhere.
It's a little chaotic. We had a wing sheared off in a backyard. The fuel from that was on fire. We had 2 in the front of the plane, and they were both very much alive. This was shortly after takeoff, so I'm sure his tanks were fairly full. We weren't sure if the liquids that were on the ground, how much was unburned fuel.
If it is fuel, it could ignite at any time. Firefighters know what they have to do and do it fast.
Put some foam blanket down. That's to protect the occupants in the plane as well as the firemen.
The pilot seemed more critical than the passenger. We wanted to get them out as quickly as possible.
The pilot of the plane, they had him out and they were doing CPR on him right away.
The pilot, Doug Touche, is in rough shape. He's rushed to the nearest hospital. His wife, Susan, is taken to University Medical Center. Amidst the chaos, neighbors tell firefighters there are 2 more victims further down the street.
When the first paramedic came to me, I was like, I was a nurse. Go to my husband, he's having trouble breathing. And then when they came to see me, I was like, okay, get my IV started. Here's my name, my date of birth. You know, I'm totally with the program. I know I don't have a head injury. Give me something for the pain. I couldn't take it anymore.
They had second-degree burns and some third-degree burns. Probably was more painful than the actual trauma they endured from the plane crash.
The adrenaline wore off, and that's when the pain kicked in. All I could do was scream. I couldn't do anything else but scream.
We're putting sterile water, and we're wrapping them with dry dressings called burn sheets. The Savoys were at a huge risk of becoming fatalities.
What a sad end to what had been a memorable weekend in Vegas. Paramedics alert University Medical Center that they have 2 more victims.
Is team all set?
So we knew that 3 were on the way. We knew 1 was sicker than the other 2, so we set up 3 teams.
Gloves.
Less than an hour after the crash, Susan Touche, Tamika Savoy, and her husband Randall arrive at UMC.
We immediately get to work on what we call the ABCs of trauma. Assess the airway first, breathing next, and then the circulation, then look at the disability, and finally expose the patient to find all of their injuries. Then you get to work on things. The best analogy I've heard from outsiders is that it looks like a pit stop at Indianapolis 500.
In 5 minutes, these ABCs tell Dr. Fildes that Randall is in danger.
We found multiple fractures.
Some tenderness here.
You know, we found internal injuries.
Third-degree burns.
We also had burns. The neurologic status was poor.
Randall, can you hear me?
Randall could have died at the scene.
He had broken 4 ribs. But it's the laceration in his spleen that needs immediate attention. It's dumping blood into his stomach area. He's at risk of bleeding out and dying. Randall is rushed into surgery. Back in the trauma unit, doctors work on Tamika's burns. It's the second-degree burns causing the most pain because the nerve cells there are still alive.
I have never in my life experienced anything like that before. I tried childbirth for 24 hours straight with no medication, and burns was 100 times worse.
To stop infection, her burns need to be cleaned and bandaged every 8 hours. Not a job for the faint-hearted.
It's horrifying for the novice trainee in medicine to see when you wash or wipe these wounds, to just see all the skin come off in your hands.
By evening, Tamika's burns have been treated, and she's given medication to ease her pain.
From the knees down, my worst part was my feet. Your toes and your fingers, that's where you have a lot of nerve endings there for your sense of feel. That pain was something I'll never forget.
By now, her husband Randall is out of surgery and in the ICU. The doctors managed to repair the rupture to his spleen without removing it.
He had an oxygen mask on, and I was watching his vital signs on the screen, and he would take it off to talk to me, and I could just see his oxygen level going down, and I'm like, stop talking, just put it back on and just stop talking.
Tamika asks doctors about her best friend Susan Touche and her husband Doug, the pilot.
We had to tell her the pilot had passed away at the scene. It was information that she was demanding from us and information that we could not withhold from her, but it really hit her hard. It really was a difficult thing for her to absorb.
They told us that his injuries were too critical and that he couldn't make it to UMC, so they had brought him to a closer hospital, and that he didn't make it.
Susan Touche's injuries are just as severe. She's on life support.
Multiple fractures, there were central nervous system injuries, included burns. Her level of consciousness and her stability of her blood pressure and pulse was poor.
I visited with her for a bit. She looked very peaceful. All of her vital signs stayed stable. Her heart rate stayed pretty stable. And I remember just sitting by her bed and holding her hand, and I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to disturb her peace. And I stayed there for about 15, 20 minutes, just sitting there on the side of her bed.
Then, in the middle of the night, Randall takes a turn for the worse.
His spleen was bleeding, and bleeding pretty rapidly. We had to remove it as a way of trying to save his life.
Randall is at risk of bleeding out and dying once again. In Las Vegas, doctors at UMC have spent the night trying to save the life of Tamika Savoy's husband, Randall.
I buzzed the nurse's station and I was like, bring me to my husband. I want to see him now. And they were like, I have something to tell you. Last night, you know, he took a turn for the worse and now he's on the breathing machine. He's on life support.
And she wanted to know, is he going to be okay? Is he going to be okay? That's an impossible question for a trauma surgeon to answer. I told her I thought he would be okay and that we would do everything we could to make sure he'd be okay.
By now, Randall's family has arrived from Louisiana. All they can do is wait and watch. As her husband fights for his life, Tamika's best friend, Susan Touche, is taken off life support.
She was in a very bad state, and we collaborate with the family in terms of what are the next steps.
The last time I saw Susan, I remember feeling so grateful that she didn't appear to be in any pain. The only time they told Susan about Doug was when they were going to take her off of the machines and let her go. They were telling her it was okay to go meet him. He was waiting for her. But I don't know how much she could understand.
Even more tragic is why Doug and Susan were in Las Vegas in the first place.
The year before, her son was in a car accident, and Las Vegas was the last place he was before he passed away. She had never been to Vegas and always wanted to come here and do the things that he did before he died.
The news only gets worse.
The day they told me they were taking Susan off of life support, the doctor also came in and said they had tried everything they could with Randall and that they just thought he would maybe have to be on the breathing machine forever.
It's unthinkable.
But it was hard enough for her to be that ill, be in an intensive care unit, just struggling with her own issues. To be asked to make decisions about her husband's critical illness was just more than any one person could bear.
Being a nurse and knowing that there was nothing I could do, and then having to try to, you know, control the medical decisions for him, and then as well as the same time being sick myself and having the burns, skin grafts, and having to worry about if my kids were okay, and it was too much. We had 2 kids, ages 4 and 2, that were back home. I had begged my mama. I remember sitting crying, begging, please bring my kids. But then I started thinking that, you know, Daddy was on the breathing machine, and I know if they'd come here, they'd want to see Daddy and talk to Daddy, and I didn't want them to see that.
Life is a gamble. A simple weekend away with friends in Sin City changes lives forever. But they also say time heals all wounds.
Randy.
Randall Savoy is taken off the ventilator and takes his first breaths on his own.
The brain, just like the heart and the kidneys and the lungs, reacts immediately to injuries in the body and reacts by becoming dysfunctional. So it takes time for them to really come around. You've got all the other problems solved, but you're waiting for their neurologic status to improve and they can come off the ventilator.
When I woke up, I was like, where am I? And he's like, man, you in Vegas. I was like, what? He's like, you got in a plane crash. I started crying. I was like, am I by myself? And he's like, no. He said, your wife's down the hall. Mom and Dad, they come here every morning. They've been coming here for a month. And I was like, a month?
She's gonna be okay.
He went from them not thinking he would make it to, boom, he's going home.
I was really, really, really lucky. My splenectomy, that was, the staples was out. My burns on my legs, it was just white, you know? It was healed, but it was just white. And the first time I stood up, it turned purple. And it felt like a million needles in my legs when the blood rushed to my feet.
1 month after the crash, Tamika and Randall Savoy head home. This time, not by plane. Their family rents an RV for the 1,600-mile drive back to Catahoula Parish.
I said I would never fly again. It took about 36 hours to get back home.
Tamika and Randall are back in Vegas for this show, flying for the first time in 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
Well, you're in great shape now. Look at you, buddy.
I went to work back in probably January.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
My mom talks about you all the time.
You know, they're really highly functional. They're all back at work. They're really happy about life. I mean, that's really a great save. Did you go over and visit today?
Yes, we did.
I'm glad. I'm sure they were happy to see you.
At the hospital, memories come flooding back.
There was a room with a metal table, and there was hoses hanging from the ceiling. And anytime they would have to take me in that room, I knew it was an intensive dress and change. Just walking by that room, I teared up and I was crying because just seeing it brought back the memories of the pain. Even today, I have some spots on my tips of my toes that are still really, really sensitive and I can't touch. But other than that, I've healed up great. My legs look amazing, but that pain was something I'll never forget. I remember every second of the crash. I remember the smell of the jet fuel. When the guy from the NTSB brought me my wallet, it smelled the jet fuel. When you put gas in your car, it's not the same smell. It has a very distinct smell, and I said, just get rid of it. Just wash my ID cards. I don't want to see it again. Get rid of it. Because that smell is so distinct, and it brought back everything. We went back to the neighborhood, too, where the accident was.
They always wondered and thought about us if we were still alive, you know, how we ended up.
And they'll never forget their friends, Susan and Doug Touche.
With every fiber of my being, I believe that Randall and I are alive today because of what Doug did. Not just saving our lives, but he dodged every house. He truly is my hero, and he always will be.
You can't thank somebody enough for that. You can't. There's no words to thank somebody enough for doing that.
My mom would really love it if I can get a picture with you.
Las Vegas to me is a very interesting place, and I wish it was like 1,000 miles closer to where I live. That way I could drive.
First time you say, oh, you know, I've seen it all, you're gonna see something else that will make you say again, well, now I've seen it all.
What's going on there?
I was shot in the leg.
You're gonna see what we're dealing with.
It was in very bad shape.
Am I gonna lose my leg?
And I saw Mike go down. The blood was just coming out like a faucet.
Come on, Mike. Stay with me here.
The skull had been driven into his brain almost an inch.
Are you Javon Walker? Yeah, that's me. Everything went downhill from there.
Guarantee you, he was never hit in the head like he was this time.
Paramedical.
Jesus.
911, what is your emergency?
Vegas is a mecca for sporting events of any kind. And for one weekend every January, thousands of gay and lesbian athletes take over the town for the Sin City Shootout Sports Festival.
Sin City Tournament is very fun, it's very colorful, it's very active, it's exhausting, but that's why it's so fun, because you're go, go, go. You play all day and then you party all night and wake up in the morning and do it all again.
What started as a softball tournament is now the largest LGBT sporting event in the world.
They have every sport that you can imagine, you know, from bowling to archery to swimming.
Charles Jacobson and Michael Stewart are here for the softball. They play for the San Diego Firestorm.
We were a young team. I'm really not expecting to win, but I just try to have a good time.
The newest addition to the team is 28-year-old Michael Petracca.
Michael is a very good player. He's definitely one of the best on the team.
He's very passionate about baseball. He loves the San Diego Padres. I always tease him for that because I'm a Chicago Cubs fan. I don't see the Padres winning very soon.
It's day 2 of the tournament. The Firestorm are in good spirits after whooping it up at the Tropicana the night before. Michael even wanted blackjack. They're feeling pretty lucky.
We had so far won 2 games that day. Everyone was excited.
They're waiting for their next game, hanging out in the public area between the diamonds, watching other teams play.
We were just talking, you know, getting our minds prepared for more games to come. All of a sudden, I saw Mike go down, and I saw his head hit the ground, and it bounced 6 or 7 inches off the pavement.
Oh, Jesus.
He was bleeding in 2 different spots in his head. The blood was just coming out like a faucet. And I'm like, what just happened?
Hey, don't move his head, don't move his head.
Michael Petracca is not moving.
There was blood coming out of his ear. When I saw that, that's when I really got scared.
The other side of his head. Michael!
It was terrifying. I saw my friend laying in a pool of his own blood.
Can you hear me?
The first thought that came to my mind was just a softball, because that happens all the time.
Come on, what happened? Oh my God.
Lying beside Michael is a bat.
Leave me alone. Somebody call the doctor.
That's just the last thing that you think is coming to hit you.
We get a call for a 31 Delta, which is one of the higher priority calls for a male unknown age with a head injury.
At the softball field with a bat. I was like, ooh, boy, hit with a bat, that's not good at all.
At the scene, some hold Michael's head. Others put towels around it, trying to stop the bleeding. Michael is not responding.
I tried speaking with him. His eyes may have been opened, but there was no life in his eyes. It was like you were talking to nobody.
Come on, Mike, wake up, wake up.
Stay with me, man, stay with me. Stay with me, man.
Oh, man, how do you know that they're gonna come out of this? You don't know if they're gonna come out of this.
5 minutes later, paramedics from Medic West and from Clark County Fire Department arrive.
Hello, guys, what happened?
Michael was lying on the ground. There were a lot of people around him. They tried to do a little crowd control. Everybody back up and relax. You could feel the bones moving together of his skull. We call it crepitus. His head actually felt mushy. He was bleeding from his ears. There was some cerebral spinal fluid coming from his ears, and that's another bad sign that you have a severe injury.
We got an unconscious male. He took a baseball bat to the head, fell to the ground, striking his head on the ground. He's got a really large laceration.
There's a lot of stuff that, as paramedics, we can do, but we don't have a quick fix for this one. Treat it with diesel. You stabilize him and then drive to the hospital as fast as you can, because he needs more than me right now. He needs a doctor, he needs a surgeon.
It was very scary hearing them trying to talk to Mike just because I knew he wasn't responding.
You're in an accident, okay, Michael? Michael, just keep your eyes open, Michael.
I'm gonna take a listen.
I haven't seen anybody with a head injury quite this bad before. I didn't know what kind of chance he had.
It's important to keep him awake, just to make sure he doesn't go into like a coma or a deeper sleep.
He's lost consciousness again.
And we have a completely different issue altogether.
Michael, are you with me?
He could die.
At University Medical Center, the trauma team is ready and waiting.
28-year-old male patient, head injury, was hit by a baseball bat.
Gave him a report, told him what happened from start to finish from what we knew.
When he came in, he had an altered mental status and he had abnormal motor movements. Those are really bad signs.
The first priority is to assess the damage to Michael's brain. He actually has 2 head injuries. One from the impact of the bat, the other from when his head smashed into the cement.
Just trying to lighten your eyes. I'm Dr. Morrissey. Hi.
Whether or not he could answer simple questions, his verbalization. We took a look at the pupils to see if they were equal in reacting.
Okay, pupil on the right, 3 sluggish. Left, 3 sluggish. We get you to do a few things for me, okay?
We checked out his motor, whether he followed commands, whether he could localize.
Squeeze my hand. Big squeeze. Harder than that. Come on. Good. Thumbs up. Let me see your thumbs. This side. Squeeze my hand. Harder, harder. Come on, squeeze my hand. There's nothing going on that side. You guys.
His mental status really was diminished. Beyond sleepy, almost a little bit more like in a coma.
The head, the baseball bat, subsequently fell.
It's a life or death situation. They order an immediate CAT scan.
Halo's negative.
Okay, great. And call in neurosurgeon Dr. William Smith.
He was in a trauma-induced coma.
Pupils are equal and reactive, but
We see people struck in the head by thrown objects all the time that can be life-threatening. He fell and struck the opposite side of his head fairly forcefully. This guy's had 2 striking head blows within a very short period of time. So he has had, by definition, repetitive concussions.
The right upper arm, left does react to pain. Sternal rub still.
The CAT scan images are dramatic.
It showed that he had a depressed skull fracture. The skull had been driven into his brain almost an inch. Underneath that, he had an epidural hematoma. An epidural hematoma is a blood clot that develops between the brain and the skull.
He's going to need to go into the OR immediately. I'm going to go and scrub in.
If they can't relieve the pressure immediately, Michael will suffer permanent brain damage or even worse, die. He came to Vegas for a weekend of fun and competition. Now, doctors are trying to save the life of softball player Michael Petracca after a baseball bat crushed his skull.
You could see and feel that he had this big boggy area the size of a baseball.
Elevate the scalp off the skull.
We ended up taking a part of his skull off, taking the pressure off his brain, and we took the skull off. It was just mashed in multiple pieces.
Okay, I can visualize the fracture. We're going to need to remove all these small fragments of bone.
We have very special instrumentations, microscope, magnifying loops, different types of drills to remove all the bone fragments. We then were able to peel this blood clot off the membrane of his brain.
Then, Dr. Smith puts Michael's skull back together again, piece by piece.
What we call a reconstructive cranioplasty.
Pass me the titanium plate so I can fasten the mesh.
The titanium plate allows the doctor to reshape Michael's head. As Michael fights for his life, word finally reaches his family.
This is Michael's friend. Michael had a bit of an accident this afternoon at the baseball game.
His friend called us and said that he's in surgery and they have a neurosurgeon was working on him. That's when we knew it was pretty bad.
I was very nervous talking to them. I mean, here I've never met these people and I'm having to relay information about their son who could potentially be dying anytime. They could hear the panic in my voice. I was still holding back as much feeling as I could. I didn't want to break down in the middle of the hospital.
My wife grabbed my hand and said, he's got to be okay, he's got to be okay. I immediately found a flight we could make. Each got a bag and threw a bunch of stuff in it that would at least get us through the night. On the way to the airport, the poor kid, I think we were texting him every 10 minutes, any updates, any updates, any updates. And also during this time, we had notified immediate family. And so having to deal with immediate family, making everyone aware of what was going on was very difficult. We had to keep repeating, obviously, the same thing over and over again, trying to explain things we didn't know, getting questions we couldn't answer. And it was, frustrating because we couldn't satisfy our family members, with any type of encouragement or anything at all, other than all we know is he's in surgery and we'll let you know as soon as we hear anything else. It was a long flight.
After 2 hours of surgery, Michael is placed in the ICU.
I did tell the nursing staff I was Mike's brother. That came out of just panic that if they thought I was just a friend, they wouldn't tell me anything. And I didn't want to be kind of kept out of the loop. I'd never been in a hospital situation where I saw someone intubated and just covered in tube.
You were the one who taught me how to...
That was very hard to see. It was just holding his hand, where I learned just how nice it is to just be able to touch somebody during a situation like that.
When his parents arrive later that evening, they learn their son is alive, but in critical condition.
It was a horrific sight. We saw him all wrapped up with tubes and wires. The first thing that went through my mind was, I hope he wakes up. We learned that the barrel end of the bat is what actually hit him straight on, the highest amount of degree of impact possible. And they think they're able to control the bleeding, but they weren't sure what the damage was, any type of permanent damage.
Everybody wants to know, well, how's he going to be? What I can say is, surgery went very well. We saved his life today. Tomorrow, if he gets through tonight, we'll have a better idea where he's going to be.
A follow-up CAT scan brings good news.
What we like to see is the brain slowly re-expand to its normal contours. His brain re-expanded very nicely, which is a very positive sign.
So positive, doctors take him off the respirator.
He's a stroke.
Michael starts to wake up.
Oh, sweetheart.
You look in your kid's eyes and you know what they're thinking, and, from when they're babies and even, now as adults. And he looked confused. He looked like he wanted to know what was going on.
Suddenly, elation turns to fear.
Don't try and speak, it's okay.
Nothing came out. It was just empty air that was coming out of his mouth.
I thought I was talking. I heard it in my head, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. Just almost like a whistle or tongue cracking, and that was it. And then I realized, all right, I can't talk.
Go get the doctor.
You're not saying anything, we can't hear you. There was something wrong with the speech.
Is Michael's inability to speak the permanent damage his family feared?
It is quite common.
Baseball player Michael Petraka survived a bat to the head, but now the young man can't talk.
Where the pressure on his brain was located, it was right over the speech center, the area that allows us to talk and communicate.
He seems to be having problems speaking.
So to expect someone to have what we call an expressive aphasia, and they can't express themselves, they have an inability to talk, temporarily, certainly not surprising in Michael's case.
Dr. Smith says there are no magic bullets. Surgery can't fix the problem. All he can say is, time will tell.
As a neurosurgeon, the brain surgeon, oh, wow, you had this great brain surgery. Well, that's just the start of his recovery. He's going to need extensive therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. It takes a lot of people, a lot of work.
Michael's bandages are removed, and his recovery begins.
Basically, you're doing the drunk test. This line right here between these two colored tiles.
It was pretty amazing. We saw him take his first steps when he was a baby, and not knowing if he was going to take steps again, it was nice to see him take steps.
Put your hands up. Fine.
He still has a long way to go.
His right side of his face didn't have motor function. And they explained that, well, when he fell and he cracked his head on the right side, he could have damaged or severed a nerve. The nerve could take up to 12 months to grow back and a full function, but they didn't know.
So, lips together, just like you did.
But there are positive signs.
Like you're popping.
I felt fairly confident he was going to recover. Why? He actually recovered pretty well his right-sided hand motion and thumb motions pretty quickly. The thumb and the hand, the part of the brain that makes them work is really right, very close to the speech center. So when I start seeing that working, I know the speech is going to come back.
All of San Diego is rooting for Michael's recovery, especially his teammates. One of his friends who works for the Padres puts a message on the Petco Park scoreboard wishing their #1 fan a speedy recovery.
I showed it to Michael. He was able to say, wow. It was very emotional that he was able to kind of breathe that out.
5 days after being hit in the head by a wild baseball bat, Michael leaves UMC and heads to a rehab center in California. The question on everyone's mind, will Michael be permanently brain damaged?
I don't like the term brain damage. You know, if you have too many drinks every weekend, you become brain damaged. He certainly had a neurologic injury, that his ability to do certain things that we like to do day to day were not as good, but he was showing signs of improvement. I can't tell them he's going to be 100% the person he was before, and that's what people want me to say.
Over the next few months, he makes great strides, relearning to walk, to write, and to talk.
I got more speech back, got feeling back in my right arm. I went to speech therapy and really learned how to literally make the sounds, tongue position, everything.
Michael doesn't remember the accident that almost killed him, just what people have told him.
Batter, when he swung, he just lost his grip on the bat.
It flew more than 50 feet over the backstop fence, slamming into Michael's head.
In the 20 years that I've played, I have never seen somebody lose control of their bat.
Michael Petracca doesn't blame the batter. In fact, he writes him a letter.
And he said, I hope you're still playing the game. I hope you don't stop playing. I don't hold any ill will to you. I don't hold you at fault for any of this. It was an accident. You let it slip out. You know, it's not your fault.
3.5 months after the accident, a dream come true. The San Diego Padres invite him to throw off the first pitch at a game.
It was amazing. I am so lucky I got to do that.
He begins playing softball again.
The first time that I saw Mike back on the field, you could tell that he wasn't 100%, but I could tell he's improved. His confidence seems to be getting better and better.
He's not 100%, but he's focused on getting there.
At this point, I'm 85% more able to speak, and I just turned on the positive outlook and was like, I can beat this. I can do anything.
Millions of people come to Vegas every year to lose their inhibitions and go wild. It's a playground for adults.
You can come and party and do whatever and kind of take caution and just throw it to the wind.
Especially if you're a celebrity. If you've got the cash, then the sky's the limit. NFL star Javon Walker's story is one for the record books.
Vegas was one of those places to let loose without no repercussions, you know, have a little bit of fun with friends.
This 29-year-old is flush with cash. He's just become the highest paid wide receiver in the league.
The day I signed with the Oakland Raiders for $55 million was a day every NFL wide receiver athlete dreams of.
We were really proud of him. Just getting to that point in your career, you know, where you finally make it.
Everything I could ever want to do for my family, I could do. It was all unfolding right in front of my eyes.
For $55 million, though, he's under pressure to perform.
We worked hard from Monday to Friday. We've been putting in the work, we've been putting in the time, so it was like, hey, let's just catch this quick flight and hang out in Vegas for a night and come back and get ready to start training again.
We basically went to the airport, but we had on, you know, and he bought all our plane tickets.
As soon as they step off the plane, the party begins.
Anytime I had my friends around me, they didn't have to worry about nothing. They was gonna get drinks, gonna go out to dinner, and I always wanted to show my friends, you know, how close I am to them, and I appreciated them.
Their favorite spot is Body English, the dance club inside the Hard Rock Hotel.
Loved the Hard Rock, saw everybody who is somebody in there.
We had a table in the VIP section. It was great, it was an awesome time.
As the night goes on, the party gets wilder.
We had a couple champagne spraying sessions. We had like 30 bottles of champagne. I don't think we drank one of them, we just sprayed all of them.
It was one of those things that just got the club and everybody excited about a great night.
Girls around always, you know, a lot of random people, you know, just show up and the bottles show up.
After splashing out 15 grand on champagne and drinks, Javon and friends decide to move the party somewhere else.
When you're leaving the nightclub, obviously you gotta pass through the casino. Once you see the casino, it's like immediate, okay, gotta start gambling. I'm playing blackjack, I'm winning.
I think I won probably like $1,200, and I think he might have won like 3 or 4 grand or something.
After 15 minutes at the table, they pocket their chips.
We headed up to one of the parties that they were having in the suite over at the Hard Rock. And there were tons of people up there, you know, drinking. I think they might have been bowling in there. So it was fun. The night was still going pretty good at that point.
About an hour later, Ryan is ready to call it a night.
Everybody was pretty intoxicated, you know, and it was time to head back to the Bellagio. So we were trying to get Javon out the room, you know, safely to the car. That was a task.
Ryan finally manages to get Javon into the cab, and they head off in 2 separate limos.
My driver went into the main entrance, and they went to the north entrance in the back to valet their car. That's where we got split up. But I think he wanted to party a little bit more.
On his way into the hotel, 2 guys in a black Range Rover call out to Javon. They say they're big fans.
Are you Javon Walker?
Hey, it is you, yo! And I'm like, yeah. Shook their hand, and you know, it's like with everybody, you greet fans.
They invite the NFL star to another club on the Strip.
You know, I'll befriend everybody, and that's what I thought I was doing that night.
Javon and the 2 men leave the hotel in a Range Rover.
That's when everything went downhill from there.
Javon Walker came to Vegas to blow off steam, but climbing into a car with 2 strangers may be taking one chance too many.
Cough it up. Oh, I'm thinking, okay, this is not going into what I think it should be going.
These so-called fans are not here to party, and now his life is on the line.
I was just sitting down saying, okay, let me see if I can maybe bargain or negotiate with him. So I told these guys, I said, listen, I'll give you everything I have on me. Just let me go. I won't say a word. You don't know me, I don't know you. One guy in the back got really, really smart. Like, no, shut up. He tried to pull my earrings out of my ear. But when you have diamonds, there's locks on the back.
Quick! Take it off, take it off!
I'm not sure how many times they hit me.
911 emergency.
I have a person laying in the street here. He looks like he's been severely beat.
Where?
From him going Albert. Can you send somebody down here for me?
The call from the security guard comes from a parking lot less than a block from the Bellagio.
I'll stand by here and wait till I get here, because he's in bad shape. Cell phones all over the place. Looks like he's been run over.
The security guard has no idea the unconscious man is NFL star Javon Walker. 5 minutes later, paramedics from Medic West and Clark County Fire Department arrive.
Caller on him. Sure. Hello, can you hear me?
He was actually out of it. We considered this an altered mental status. He had swelling on his face, he had marks, there was bruising and bleeding. Whatever happened to him, if he was beaten up, they did a pretty good job on him.
His vital signs are normal, but his battered face and head could spell trouble.
If you've had a significant amount of facial trauma or trauma to the skull, that can cause a smorgasbord of problems that could take place. And whenever you have that swelling within the brain, that's when you really need to get your patient to the hospital as quickly as possible. It wasn't until we kind of got close to Sunrise Hospital that I said, this is a familiar face. This seems like somebody who I may have seen before.
Once I realized it was Javon Walker, knowing that he's an NFL player, having a possible spinal cord injury or even a brain injury, the thought crosses your mind. I wonder what his life is going to be like after this.
They arrive at Sunrise Medical Center, where emergency room physician Dr. Gary Goldberg is starting his morning shift.
What have we here?
We have a male patient in his 20s suspected assault.
Shortly after he came in, I did find out that he was a football player.
Obvious injury to the right eye.
I guarantee you, he was never hit in the head like he was this time.
Sir, do you know where you are?
I could smell alcohol in his breath. If you have an intoxicated patient with a significant head injury, you've got a real problem. I couldn't see his eye, so we already are worried that there may be a fracture in his face. Facial fractures can be very serious, including with permanent damage possibly to the facial or eye muscles and visual problems, dental problems, all that, rebreathing problems. So that's significant. You rarely see that with football. The football players, they've got guards on their face. They don't get those kind of injuries.
His blood alcohol level is almost 4 times over the limit. A CAT scan is the only way to know the extent of Javon's injuries. Injuries that could end a $55 million football career.
What we worry about are significant structural injuries to the brain that could be even life-threatening. When someone presents with what appears to be a concussion or an altered mental state from a head injury, we need to pursue that. If he had a hemorrhage to his brain, that could put pressure on the brain, have to be released, and he'd have to go to the operating room and have neurosurgical intervention. And that happens not infrequently with the type of trauma that he sustained.
I woke up to a slew of phone calls in the morning, and it was a lady that worked inside the Bellagio. She said that Javon got robbed and beat up really bad, and he's at the Sunrise Hospital, so I immediately got up and I took a cab over to the hospital. All kinds of things are going through my head, and I was just with him less than 5 hours before I got the phone call, you know what I mean? How bad could it be?
The CAT scan shows that Javon hasn't suffered any brain damage, and there's no sign of any injuries to his spine. But he has suffered a concussion and a severely broken jaw.
The maxilla is the upper part of the jaw. And when that fractures, that takes a pretty solid hit to do that.
He's also shattered a bone in his eye socket.
We often call these types of fractures blowout fractures because the bone in this area of the floor is so thin that it will literally blow out, and you'll end up with a hole inside the eye socket. That has major implications for your vision. In the worst case scenario, blindness. Obviously, major implications for a high-end athlete.
It would be up to the surgeons to decide what exactly they were going to do and when they were going to do it.
Javon, what happened? Are you okay? When I got closer to him, I looked, and it was way worse than I thought it was. Training camp was starting in a few weeks, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, it's no way he's gonna be able to, play football like this right now.
Your way, I went my way.
Javon's career and his $55 million contract hang by a thread. A few hours earlier, NFL player Javon Walker was partying the night away in Vegas. Now, he lies badly beaten in a hospital room.
I was bandaged up, just kind of like mumbling, like, because my mouth and everything, you know, was all messed up. My eye socket was cracked. I was just in a daze.
The 27 years we've been together, you know, he's never, you know, got in trouble like that when I was with him. You know, part of me felt really guilty, you know. When he opened his eyes, he looked at me, and a tear kind of came out of his eye, and he was like, call my mom. That was like one of the hardest phone calls I've ever had to make in my life. I tried to gather myself for a second, and I called her. She picked up the phone.
Hi, is this Bernita?
I started praying and just asked the Lord to protect my child and hope that he was okay.
His mom is one of the strongest women I've ever met, you know, and she stays calm.
The specialist decides Javon's eye injury doesn't require surgery. It will heal on its own. However, he does need extensive surgery to repair his broken jaw.
Javon had an alveolar bone fracture, which is the bone of the upper jaw that houses the teeth or holds the teeth in place. The way we stabilize those fractures is by binding them to the other stable teeth.
Arch bar, please.
Because the fracture really involves the bone immediately around the teeth, no incisions need to be made.
I have some irrigation and suction, please.
That's good.
We can just stabilize the teeth by putting them back into position without doing any cutting, really.
Doctors caution Javon that he'll be out of commission for 6 to 8 weeks. The reality sinks in.
Here I am, mouth wired, and I'm going into camp, and I can't participate with the team. I was the highest paid receiver in the NFL, you know, so there was going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered.
The story is big news. It sets off a nationwide media frenzy. Not all of it is sympathetic.
Champagne showers and a bloody beating. That's how NFL wide receiver The wide receiver was found unconscious on a street just off the Vegas Strip.
The $55 million player suffered a battered face.
Walker claims he was robbed of $100,000 worth of jewelry.
The media, you know, just showing everything on TV and how everything that was happening, it's like I couldn't take anymore.
Totally unfair. You know, he wasn't harming anyone, you know, he was just having a good time.
Everybody wants the spotlight, but can you handle the spotlight? Because when the spotlight is good, it's good, but when it gets bad, it's bad. That's when everything just became depressing.
Javon, your mom...
3 days after the attack, Javon's mom arrives and sees her son's injuries firsthand.
When I opened the door, Javon turned his head in the opposite direction so I couldn't see him.
How did this happen? Come here. My handsome man.
You know, his face was disfigured looking, but I held my composure very well. And I just told him, I said, they can't mess up that handsome face.
Could you tell me?
And when I said that, it looked like it was a big relief off of him also.
Did the doctor say?
After 4 days, Javon Walker leaves Sunrise Hospital.
They just said, you're gonna heal fine and take care of your eye, just no contact. No contact for me that's why I couldn't participate when it was time for me to go to camp.
Las Vegas police know whoever robbed and beat Javon was driving a black Range Rover. They check the security camera footage at the Hard Rock and spot the Range Rover suspiciously circling the valet area. It follows Javon and his friend back to the Bellagio. When they check the license plate, they discover the driver is 31-year-old Arfat Fidel. Fidel is seen hovering near Javon and Ryan outside the hotel. When Javon finally gets into the limo, Fidel is seen on his cell phone. Then, once he sees they're ready to leave, he leaves too.
And Javon was a person, you know, he never thought he needed security, ever. He was just like, you know, no one's, you know, I'm a nice guy. No one's ever gonna do that to me. Nothing's wrong with going out. Nothing's wrong with partying. You know, it's just sometimes you definitely have to be aware of your surroundings, you know. And Javon was a person, you know, he's such a friendly guy and such a giving person. If those guys would have came up to him and be like, hey, I'm in a bad situation, we need to borrow some money, he probably would have gave it to him.
Javon picks Fidel out of a photo lineup. His accomplice, 40-year-old Deshaun Thomas of Las Vegas, is arrested and charged as well. Fidel pleads guilty to second-degree kidnapping and robbery and receives 3 to 8 years. He testifies against his co-accused, saying it was Thomas's idea to target and rob Javon. Thomas is convicted of first-degree kidnapping and sentenced to life without parole. 8 weeks after the beating and robbery, the wires are removed from Javon's jaw, and he's back on the field.
Felt like everything was getting put behind me now, and, hopefully go out and catch one touchdown and all will be forgotten. As the season starts going on, I'm still getting backlash, Anytime you mention my name, oh, he caught a touchdown, but hey, remember that incident in Vegas? It's like you could do nothing without your past being brought up.
A few games in, he breaks his ankle, putting him out of commission again, this time for the rest of the season.
Instead of that being talked about, it was still Vegas. It was still Vegas. It was still, oh, look at him. He's hurt now. See, he should have never went to Vegas. What does Vegas have to do with me breaking my ankle, getting tackled? I got to a point where I didn't want to play football no more because I got tired of all the ridicule.
His career fizzles, and 2 years later, he's released from the Raiders.
I was hurt because, football, that's my sport, that's my God-gifted ability. So when you kind of take that away from anybody, you're sad about it, regardless if it's a good situation or a bad situation.
But as time passes, Javon learns to put that crazy night in Vegas behind him.
I just had a whole new outlook on things because I wasn't in the spotlight no more. That's when I felt like, oh my God, I can breathe now.
He's built a new career in competitive bodybuilding and sports nutrition.
Javon's always been like real health conscious, and him playing football since he was a kid, he's always had like great physique. I just think now, that he could help people change their lives, in a positive way by helping them with their bodies. I think that's just something that makes him happy.
You have mistakes that are made, and there's always a plan from God, and I felt like it's not over. I had to go through that dark, dark time to be the way I am right now.
Tourists flock to Vegas to enjoy its casinos and clubs, and some of the best food in the world. Peter Scarturo is executive chef at Trevi, one of the most popular restaurants on the Strip.
As an executive chef, I still go in the kitchen. We get on the line, we help out, we relieve the guys for breaks. Sometimes you have special requests for a guest, so it's better to get back there yourself sometimes and just take care of that.
It's a pressure cooker world. The competition is fierce.
I'm up anywhere between 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm at the restaurant by 5 a.m.
It's the end of another long day for Peter, and a chance to relax.
Just was settling in on the couch, watching TV, had a glass of wine.
He can't completely unwind, though.
Next door, there was parties in the backyard, people smoking dope and drinking all hours of the night, people coming and going. There was a lot going on, and there was a lot of home invasions in my neighborhood. So I just had a gun for protection. I guess I was just so tired, and I was fiddling around with it, and I just fell asleep.
A long day, a glass of wine, and a loaded .44 Magnum. What could go wrong? Something has gone horribly wrong at the home of Vegas chef Peter Scarturo.
Fire medical? What's going on there?
I accidentally shot myself in the leg.
Okay.
Please help me.
And how did it happen?
It just went off. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, it hurts so bad. Oh, hold on. What the hell happened? I must have dozed off. I don't know.
Are you able to unlock the door when we get there?
I'll try.
All right, so I need you to try to get to the door. I'm going to stay on the line with you, okay?
Yes. Oh.
Okay, so just
Oh, God. I can't put pressure on it.
I couldn't stand up because without a kneecap, you can't stand. I found that out the hard way.
Oh. I'm crawling over there to the door. I don't believe this.
Even though it was maybe 6 or 8 feet away, it felt like 100 yards. It's amazing what your body and mind can do when you're in a panic situation. I just reached up, kind of pushed myself up as high as I could, unlocked the door, opened it, and then just kind of slumped back down.
Please hurry.
Police are sent to clear the scene before paramedics can move in.
You don't know what you're walking into. Somebody could say they have a self-inflicted gunshot wound. You walk in and there's an active burglary going on. It can be as dangerous for us as it is for the victim.
Meanwhile, Peter is seeing firsthand the damage a .44 Magnum can do.
I could literally see inside my leg, the tissue, the muscle, the blood, everything. I could probably fit 3-4 fingers inside that hole if I wanted to.
5 minutes later, the police finally give the paramedics the all clear.
He was in an obvious amount of distress. He was screaming at me, you know, my knee, my knee.
You gotta see what we're dealing with.
A gunshot wound to the knee is a very serious injury. There's a lot of arteries, tendons, ligaments inside the kneecap. If you hit any of those, then you're worried that he will never be able to walk again. He could possibly bleed out.
Peter, I need you to focus on your breathing, okay?
The paramedics wrap his knee with pressure bandages to control the bleeding.
This is trip 541. We have a 51-year-old male patient with a gunshot wound to the right knee.
When we have critical patients like this, we monitor their blood pressure every 5 minutes. When your blood pressure lowers and your heart rate elevates, it's called a compensatory state of shock. It's your body trying to make up for lost blood. That's when you kind of hit the panic button.
I asked the EMTs, am I gonna lose my leg? I was really, really frightened.
At University Medical Center, orthopedic trauma surgeon Dr. Roger Fonts is called in.
Hey, what do we have here? This is Peter. He's a 51-year-old male with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the right knee.
Everything's going to be okay. So just relax and we're going to get you out of the bed.
Believe it or not, I do get enough self-inflicted gunshot wounds accidental, but I've never heard of a patient, you know, falling asleep and then shooting himself.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
We go with the punches and take care of the patient.
I have a bipedal pulse. Can you feel this? Can you feel this? Can you wiggle your toes?
It's almost always worse under the skin than what the skin looks like. And the first assessment that's always done is to make sure that there's no vascular injury, because that's the most important, potentially limb or life-threatening complication of the injuries.
The images reveal the gunshot narrowly missed Peter's major artery.
If it had been a little more posterior, the injury would have gone through his femur, through his actual knee joint. Behind that's his major artery and vein, which could have potentially killed him.
The bad news? The bullet blew away a third of Peter's kneecap. He could be permanently disabled if they don't operate right away.
One thing about bullet injuries is they create significant fragmentation of the bone. If you took an oatmeal cookie and you hit it with a hammer, you're going to have a lot of pieces.
And irrigate?
That's kind of how this fracture was. You don't want to have those pieces of bone floating around inside the joint. You know, it'd be like having sand inside your engine.
Dr. Fonts washes out the knee joint and removes as many of the floating bone fragments as he can. Most are too small to remove.
The large parts of the fragments were actually well contained. It turns out the patella is actually encased in a tendon, and that tendon almost serves like an internal cast. So we were hopeful that just with the washout that internal cast would contain the bone fragments and let him heal.
Peter, how are you today?
Hey, Doc, how are you?
How are you feeling, buddy?
I says, Doc, I feel like a dumb He goes, really, you shouldn't. It happens a lot. Didn't really feel better, but I was astonished that it happens that often.
48 hours after he shot himself in the leg, Peter Scarturo leaves the hospital with a leg brace. His future as a chef is uncertain.
A typical chef is on his or her feet 10 to 12, 14 hours a day, often 6 days a week. Even a standard patella fracture is a 6-month recovery process.
Now that you have the realization, okay, I'm okay, but how am I going to be okay after this? How long is it going to take me? You start thinking, I need to get back to work.
3 months go by, and the chef can still barely walk.
I gained like 60 pounds because I couldn't exercise. It was just really, really hard.
It's back to surgery for a second time.
Clamps, please.
His cartilage had healed, but there was an area of bone defect. And so we filled that with some bone substitute, synthetic bone, and other tissues, and then had to cover it so that it wouldn't float around inside his joint.
Screw.
Put some screws and wires in there to help hold the fracture together and try to promote healing.
I went back to work 2 days after the second surgery. I still had staples in my leg. I got a nickname, Pistol Pete. And everyone's like, how do you come to work like that? I'm like, I can't stay home.
5 months after kneecapping himself with a .44 Magnum, Chef Peter is back in the kitchen, serving up his signature-style Italian dishes.
I'm great now. I can go to the gym again. I can walk normally. I'm thankful. The doctors, the nurses, everybody there, their knowledge and their experience with trauma is incredible.
He's also a lot wiser about guns.
It makes you realize no matter how good you are with a handgun, anything can happen. I'm obviously a bad aim.